Hello and welcome back to Talking Europe. The right to clean water and sanitation is recognized by the United Nations, and yet more than 2 billion people in the world lack access to safely managed drinking water, according to the World Health Organization. Obviously, Europeans have it much better than people in Niger or Papua New Guinea, for example. But even here in Europe, climate change could deprive populations of much of their water too. So this precious resource needs to be managed more sustainably, European leaders are saying. The French government, for example, recently launched a plan to save water just after pitched battles were fought in a field between security forces and militant ecologists. To discuss smart water management, I'm joined by two MEPs who are from the Parliament's Committee on the Environment, Public Health and Food Safety. Sara Cerdas is a Portuguese socialist and democrat. Welcome to you.
Thank you.
And I'm also joined by Per Holmgren, who's a Swedish Green. Welcome to you as well, Per.
Thank you.
So let's just quickly set the scene in both of your countries, because Europe this winter actually has been facing a drought as well. So clearly the problem is getting worse. And Sara Cerdas, in Portugal, you had a particularly severe drought last summer. So how bad are you expecting things to be this year?
Yeah, last summer in Portugal, we have that 66% of our territory was in severe drought. So it was indeed very problematic. There was a lot of extra measures beyond. We reached around 93 measures that the government was launching in order to have better water management for agriculture, for the people, for a public access to the water. And this summer, I believe things will be more crucial and more problematic, because the water sources, the water dams are not being filled as we hoped they would be. And this is something that we take very seriously and are looking very seriously to the summers. But this is not a situation that it's going to be hard this summer and then better the summer afterwards. This is something that will keep going harder and harder, and this is climate change happening right now.
And the dams obviously are linked to generating electricity, so water is linked to energy and so on. Per Holmgren, so there was a drought in Sweden in 2018.
Yeah.
Since then you've seen this effect of Arctic heat as well having an impact on northern Sweden.
Yeah, we've had really extreme wildfires in 2018, also 2014, on a scale that we haven't seen in modern Sweden. And of course, still we have sort of larger margins than the south of Europe, but especially the southeast of Sweden, where we also have a lot of the agriculture production in Sweden, will be hit very hard with severe droughts in many summers ahead of us.
So let's look at what solutions there could be. The French government is focusing on reusing water, because in France, according to official figures, only about 1% of water is reused. Would that be your main policy prescription, maybe?
No, not the main one.
Right.
I think the main one for me and for us as Greens is really to consider where and how do we use the water. I mean, we're using huge amounts of water to produce clothes. As one example, we need really to move into a circular economy. We use enormous amounts of water to produce meat, milk, etc., etc. So I think especially in the agriculture sector, we need to have a huge transformation now, both for food security, but also to realize that still in the agricultural sector, we do have a huge impact on climate.
We'll come back to agriculture, but just on those earlier points, Sara Cerdas, what do you think about this idea of reusing water, or are you on Per Holmgren's line of simply reducing drastically the amount of water that we're currently using?
It's a bit of both, and I would say it's not just a clear answer on A or B. We need to look at the water cycle. Where are the main hardships and how we can mitigate the effects that we are having. I don't know how many liters it takes just to make a blouse, and this is something that needs to decrease, as Per rightly said so, with the circular economy package. But I would like to highlight also the nature restoration law that we're currently working here at the Parliament, that we aim to reduce let's say, bad management on water usage. We need to use our water more efficiently. And I would like to also point out that at the UN Conference of Water that happened in March, it was the first one after decades of the last one, and they asked for a special envoy for water. This is the importance that the world is giving to water, and obviously we had a set of voluntary measures, but we hope to make it effective at the next COP in order for us to deal with this sustainable development goal as something that we need to achieve in order for the sustainable development goals as a whole not to fail.
So the European Water Framework, you've argued that it's been, basically it's fit for purpose, but it needs to be applied better. Is that up to member states to do that then?
We actually had a regulation on this topic at the beginning of this legislature, so 2019-2020 was before the pandemic. It was fit for purpose, but perhaps we need to revise it and clearly understand if the member states are applying it and what else can we do.
Yeah, and just on your point about agriculture, because this is crucial, obviously, isn't it, Per? The pollution that's coming from certain agricultural practices is affecting groundwater, which is then used for drinking water.
Yeah.
So how do you change these agricultural practices then?
Well, you know, we're stuck in a situation where most of the industrialized agriculture in Europe have been very, very keen on staying in that system. But we really need to transform the whole agricultural sector. And for us as Greens, it's very important to take more of that money to all those, especially smaller farmers that want to invest in ecosystem services. And one of them is, of course, how to have better use of the water and have better soils.
Yeah.
Because this is also a problem. Yes, we do have severe droughts, but we also have severe floodings. And then if we create a agricultural system that can better manage and keep the water that we have when we have these severe floodings.
Flooding as well as,
Yeah.
as drought. What innovations do you think are needed in European agriculture, Sarah Silvers?
I believe we should look at it as I stated, at the whole cycle, but see what the technology can do for us. And also in the agriculture sector, there's a lot that needs to be changed in order to make our soils better absorbent. We had one of the most severe cases of floodings in a region where I come from, Madeira, in 2010. And what we saw there, it rained for some hours, and the whole mountains just pushed everything on their side until the ocean. And
It was a mudslide.
Yeah, it was an absolute disaster. And if you don't have good soils, if you don't have good plants putting the soils down, absorbing that water, everything will just come until the ocean, not being stopped by any buildings or cars or persons. So this is something that we need to think about, how to make our soils, our terrains more resilient to the floods, but also for them to absorb the water, to be there in order to be reused for the life cycle of the water.
Yeah. Per Holmgren, I was interested to read a report that the group of the Greens came out with, talking about how scarcity of water could actually lead to conflict in Europe if something isn't done. Just we don't have a lot of time. Just outline for us that link between security and water resources.
Yeah, I mean, the reason is that we have a history where we've, especially in the north of Europe, could have viewed water as more or less infinite.
Yeah.
But we now already at 1.2 degrees global warming. We are seeing these terrible droughts, especially in the south of Europe. And I mean, we will reach 1.5 degrees in the beginning of next decade. And these sort of consequences will really accelerate and be more and more severe. And then, of course, water will be a very, very core problem. Who will control the water? What should we use it for? And sooner or later, we will probably see different actors claiming the water, not the least if we're looking at a river, who should take the water upstream or should we let it flow downstream?
Just a final quick comment. Are you worried about this scenario of water wars in Europe?
Yeah, this is something when I was preparing for this chat, I was reading that water will be the new gold in a few decades, if not before, and it's true. And for that, we need to understand that water is a common public good, and we need to take care of it throughout its whole cycle, not only when it's the ground. We need also to look at our oceans and what other perspectives we can have in order to make it a sustainable use of water for all. We're not just talking about human consumption, but we're talking for the whole nature.
Okay, we'll have to end on that note. Thank you so much to both of you for your thoughts, Sara Scherdas and Per Holmgren. And that's all for this week's episode of Talking Europe. See you again soon for another show from the European Parliament.